I sat in the sterile conference room of Ellis and Associates in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, staring across the polished mahogany table at the woman who had once promised to love me forever. Haley Pierce, my wife of 5 years, perched there in her ivory suit, legs crossed elegantly, a Mont Blanc pen, the one I'd gifted her on our wedding day, twirling between her manicured fingers. At 34, she still had that PR executive glow, the kind that turned heads at networking events, but today her smile was sharper, more predatory, like a blade catching the fluorescent light. "After today, I won't be your wife anymore," she said lightly, as if we were discussing weekend plans. "I'll be an independent millionaire, totally worth sacrificing 5 years with you." Her words hit me like a dull thud in the chest, but I didn't flinch. At 43, I'd learned to mask my reactions. Years in the cutthroat world of software engineering had taught me that. I kept my hands steady on the black leather briefcase in my lap, my expression neutral, almost bored. Beside me, Raymond Ellis, my silver-haired attorney with over 300 divorce cases under his belt, adjusted his glasses and nodded subtly. He knew what was coming. Haley didn't. She leaned forward, signing the divorce papers with a flourish, her laughter bubbling up like champagne. "I'm taking half of everything you've got, Logan, and the other half of my life I won't need you in it anymore." She glanced sideways at Chase, her so-called attorney, a slick guy in a too-new suit with a smug grin that screamed opportunist. His hand brushed hers under the table, a touch too familiar for a professional relationship. I caught it but said nothing. Chase chuckled along with her, leaning back in his chair. "Georgia law's on our side, Mrs. Pierce. Community property means you get your fair share of the company stock, the real estate, the investments, everything." Haley's eyes sparkled with triumph as she slid the signed papers toward me. "Come on, Logan. Sign it. Let's make this quick. I've got a lunch reservation at the Capitol Grill to celebrate my freedom." I picked up the pen slowly, my mind flashing through the last few months. The late nights she'd come home smelling of cologne that wasn't mine. The whispered phone calls in the bathroom. The way she'd started eyeing our assets like they were prizes in a game she'd already won. But I didn't let any of that show. Instead, I signed my name in steady cursive, pushing the document back across the table. "There," I said quietly. "Done." Haley clapped her hands, once a sharp, victorious sound. "Finally, Chase, let's get out of here. I feel like a new woman already." As they gathered their things, Raymond cleared his throat. "We'll see you in court for the Asset Division hearing, Mrs. Pierce, 2 weeks from now." She waved dismissively, already halfway to the door. "Oh, please. It's a formality. Half of Volt Cortec alone will set me up for life. Logan's too soft to fight it." I watched her leave, her heels clicking confidently down the hallway, Chase trailing behind like a shadow. The door shut with a soft click, leaving Raymond and me in silence. He turned to me, his voice low. "You sure about this, Logan? Once we pull the trigger in court," I nodded, opening my briefcase just enough to glimpse the thick file inside, the one with the trusts, the LLCs, the offshore accounts. "I've been sure for 7 years, Ray. She thinks she's walking away with millions. Let her laugh now." As I stood to leave, a faint smile tugged at my lips for the first time that day. Haley had no idea that behind my boring facade was a fortress I'd built long before she ever dreamed of betraying me. The real estate in Atlanta and Savannah transferred to a Delaware LLC years ago. The crypto investments locked in cold wallets under a Cayman entity. "Logan," he rasped his hand, gripping mine weakly, "remember, this nothing in this world is as fragile as love when money gets in the way. Build walls around what you've earned or someone will tear them down." Those words stuck with me like glue. I just sold my first software startup for $3.5 million, a decent sum for a 36-year-old engineer who'd coded through sleepless nights in a cramped garage. I was riding high, but Mitchell's warning planted a seed of caution. I wasn't paranoid, just practical. Life had taught me early that people change, and not always for the better. That's when I met Haley. It was at a media conference in Austin, Texas, the kind where tech meets marketing. She was a PR specialist, 27 at the time, with a laugh that lit up the room, and eyes that made you feel like the only person in it. We hit it off over drinks, talking about algorithms and ad campaigns until the bar closed. She was ambitious, sharp, the kind of woman who could charm a room full of investors. I fell hard. 6 months later, we were engaged, and by our first anniversary, married in a small ceremony on Tybee Island, just off the Georgia coast. Haley wanted to keep our finances separate. "I'm a modern woman, Logan," she'd said with that playful smile. "I don't want to depend on anyone. Let's build together, but on our own terms." I agreed why not, it sounded fair, but Mitchell's words echoed in my head. I loved her truly, but love doesn't blind you to reality. So I called Raymond Ellis, an old family friend and divorce attorney who'd handled Mitchell's mess. "Ray," I told him over coffee in his Buckhead office, "I need to protect what I've got without Haley knowing. Make it ironclad." He nodded, no judgment in his eyes. "Smart move, kid. We'll set up an irrevocable trust, the Pierce Dynasty Trust. Put your company stock in there, name your mother and sister as beneficiaries. It'll be established before the wedding, so it's not marital property." We did just that. VoltCore Tech, my new software firm specializing in AI-driven security systems, was born shortly after. I poured the startup money into it, but the shares went straight into the trust. Haley never asked about the details. She was too busy climbing her PR ladder landing clients for high-profile campaigns. Next came the real estate. We bought a house in Atlanta's Virginia Highland neighborhood, charming, with a wraparound porch and a backyard for barbecues. But I transferred it to Pierce Holdings, LLC, a company I set up in Delaware. Delaware's laws are a fortress for asset protection. No one touches what's inside. Without a court battle, they'd lose. The Savannah Beach condo followed suit rental agreements, made it look like passive income, but ownership was locked away. Then the investments. Crypto was booming back then. I sank money into Bitcoin and Ethereum early, watching it grow to 7 figures, I said. But I didn't keep it in a joint account. With help from a lawyer friend in the Caymans, I moved it to cold wallets under an offshore entity. Untraceable for divorce purposes, perfectly legal. Haley saw the lifestyle, the trips to Maldives she charged to my card, the designer bags, the home gym, but she never dug deeper. Why would she? I played the role of the boring husband, perfectly burying myself in code while she partied with her girlfriends. But cracks formed. 2 years in, Haley started pulling away. Late nights at client dinners. Perfume that wasn't hers lingering on her clothes. I ignored it. At first, love makes you blind, right? But doubt crept in. One evening, a business trip to Seattle got canceled last minute. I came home early, flowers in hand, hoping to surprise her. The house was dark except for the bathroom light upstairs. Laughter echoed down the hall, hers light and flirtatious. I paused at the door, heart pounding. Through the crack, I heard her voice breathy and conspiratorial on the phone. "After the divorce, I'll take $10 million from Logan. We can start fresh in Miami. I've put up with him long enough." A man's voice replied, smooth, confident. "Just get him to sign. Georgia's community property laws will give you half if we play up your emotional contributions." Chase. I'd never met him, but I'd heard the name in passing, a former stockbroker she'd networked with. My blood ran cold, but I didn't burst in. Instead, I pulled out my phone, hit record, and captured every word. The call ended with her giggling about our stale marriage. I slipped away quietly up to my office and locked the door. No tears, no rage, just clarity. Mitchell was right. I opened my laptop, reviewing the trusts, the LLCs, the offshore accounts. Everything was in place. At 3 a.m., I emailed Raymond, "It's time to activate the final layer of defense." He replied within minutes, "Understood. We'll let her think she's winning until she isn't." From that night on, I played along, let her charge the cards, plan her girls' trips, all while VoltCore grew quietly, securing contracts with Fortune 500 companies. Haley thought she was married to a mid-level engineer scraping by. She had no clue the man she mocked was sitting on an empire she'd never touch. As the months dragged into our separation, I watched her confidence swell. She paraded Chase around like a trophy, whispering about the millions she'd soon have. But I knew the truth. Her victory was an illusion I'd crafted years ago. And in that Fulton County courtroom, it would all come crashing down. The morning of the Asset Division hearing arrived with the kind of humid Georgia heat that made everything feel heavier. I stepped into courtroom 4A at the Fulton County Family Court in Atlanta, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and stale coffee. At 43, I'd been in boardrooms that decided multi-million-dollar deals, but this felt different, personal, final. I took my seat on the defendant's side, dressed in my simple navy suit, no tie, hair combed neatly. Raymond sat beside me, his thick file of documents stacked like a fortress. Across the aisle, Haley entered like she owned the place in a pristine white dress that screamed innocence. Her makeup, flawless, a pearl necklace I'd bought her glinting under the lights. She slid into her seat next to Chase, her hand resting possessively on his arm, a move that might have stung once, but now just confirmed what I already knew. Chase adjusted his tie, flashing that overconfident smile as he whispered something in her ear. She nodded, her posture straight and regal like a queen about to claim her throne. He's going to sit there, head down, and sign it all away. Trust me. I overheard her murmur to him, her voice carrying just enough for me to catch it. I didn't react. Why would I? The game was already rigged in my favor. Judge Juliana Baker, a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s with a reputation for cutting through the bullshit, entered the room. The bailiff called us to order, and we rose. She settled behind the bench, adjusting her glasses as she scanned the docket. We're here for the asset division in the matter of Pierce versus Pierce. The divorce itself is uncontested, but the petitioner, Mrs. Haley Pierce, has filed for equitable distribution under Georgia law. Let's begin. Counsel for the petitioner, state your claims. Chase stood buttoning his jacket with a flourish. He was playing the part of the sharp attorney, but I knew better Raymond had run a background check. Chase was a disbarred stockbroker with a history of shady deals. Your Honor, he began, his voice smooth and rehearsed, Mrs. Pierce requests the following 50% of the shares in VoltCore Tech, the software company owned by Mr. Pierce. Equitable division of the 2 real estate properties in Atlanta and Savannah. 50% of all joint investment accounts, and 50% of the cryptocurrency assets declared on last year's tax returns. These assets were accumulated during the marriage, and under Georgia's community property principles, my client is entitled to her fair share for her emotional and social contributions to the union. Haley leaned back slightly, a subtle smile playing on her lips as Chase laid it out. She glanced my way, once her eyes gleaming with what looked like pity mixed with triumph. I held her gaze for a second, then looked away, focusing on the judge. Inside, my pulse was steady. I'd rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times. Judge Baker nodded. Noted. Mr. Ellis, response from the respondent. Raymond rose slowly, his silver hair catching the light as he handed a thick binder to the bailiff. Your Honor, my client does not contest the divorce. However, we vigorously oppose all financial claims. There are no true marital assets to divide. Everything cited by the petitioner was legally transferred or structured outside the marriage in full compliance with state and federal laws. The room shifted. Haley's smile faltered for a split second, but she recovered, whispering urgently to Chase. He waved her off, but I saw the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Raymond continued, his voice measured and authoritative. First, the shares in VoltCore Tech are held by the Pierce Dynasty Trust, an irrevocable trust established 18 months before the marriage. Mrs. Pierce has no legal claim. Second, the Atlanta and Savannah properties are owned by Pierce Holdings, LLC, a Delaware entity with long-term lease agreements. Mr. Pierce serves as director, not owner. Thus, they are not marital property. Third, the investment accounts transferred to secure offshore-managed wallets prior to any joint filings. And finally, Zutz. He paused, holding up a small USB drive like it was Exhibit A in a murder trial. We submit this audio recording as evidence of Mrs. Pierce's systematic infidelity, financial abuse, and premeditated intent to defraud. It documents her affair with Mr. Chase here and explicit plans to exploit the marriage for gain. The courtroom went dead silent. Haley's face drained of color, her hand slipping from Chase's arm. He shot her a panicked look, but she was staring at the USB like it was a bomb. Whispers rippled through the gallery, reporters in the back scribbling furiously. Judge Baker leaned forward, her expression unreadable. Bailiff, play the recording. The audio filled the room, Haley's voice breathy and conspiratorial from that night in the bathroom. After the divorce, I'll take $10 million from Logan. We can start fresh in Miami. I've put up with him long enough. Chase's reply followed. Just get him to sign. Georgia's laws will give you half. Haley buried her face in her hands as the clip ended. Chase stammered something about context, but the damage was done. The judge held up a hand. We'll recess for 15 minutes while I review the full evidence in chambers. Counsel, prepare your arguments. As the gavel struck, I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Haley thought she was pulling the strings, but she had no idea she'd lost this game before it even started. The walls I'd built 7 years ago were about to come crashing down on her. The 15-minute recess felt like an eternity. But when the courtroom doors reopened, the shift in the air was palpable. I returned to my seat briefcase at my feet, watching as Haley shuffled back in. Her white dress now looked crumpled, her makeup smudged around the eyes, turning her once confident gaze into something raw and desperate. Chase was nowhere to be seen, his chair empty, his briefcase gone. I wondered if he'd slipped out the back, realizing the ship was sinking. Haley glanced around wildly, her hands twisting in her lap, but she sat alone, isolated in the room she'd thought she'd conquer. Judge Baker re-entered, her expression sterner than before, the USB drive now tucked into her file. The bailiff called order, and we rose again. As we sat, she didn't waste time. "I've reviewed the recording and the supporting documents," she announced, her voice echoing off the wood-paneled walls. "The evidence is clear and compelling. The audio confirms Mrs. Pierce's infidelity, including premeditated discussions of financial exploitation. Furthermore, the asset structures presented by the respondent are legally sound. No marital property exists as claimed." Haley's breath hitched audibly. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. The judge continued, unflinching. "The Volt Core Tech shares are held in an irrevocable trust predating the marriage. The real estate is owned by a Delaware LLC with no direct ties to the marital estate. The investments, including cryptocurrency, are secured in offshore entities inaccessible under Georgia law. Mrs. Pierce's claims of contribution are undermined by the evidence of abuse and deceit." Raymond nodded subtly beside me, but I kept my eyes forward, my face a mask of calm. Inside, a quiet satisfaction bloomed, not vengeance, but justice, the kind I'd engineered years ago. Additionally, Judge Baker said, her tone sharpening, "the petitioner's misrepresentations in filings and during this hearing constitute ethical violations. Mrs. Pierce, you will bear the full cost of the respondent's legal fees, $47,300 payable within 30 days. No alimony or asset division is awarded. You retain only personal items in your name." The words hung in the air like a verdict from on high. Haley shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "No, that can't be right." Her voice cracked, echoing through the courtroom. "This is impossible. He has millions. I've seen the lifestyle, the trips, the accounts. You can't just say it's all gone." The judge's gavel cracked down. "Mrs. Pierce, sit down or you'll be held in contempt. The law is clear. These assets were protected legally. Your actions have consequences." Haley collapsed back into her seat, tears streaming down her face, ruining what was left of her composure. Whispers erupted from the gallery, reporters jotting notes, a few shaking their heads. I didn't move, didn't gloat. I just watched my pulse, even as the empire she'd imagined crumbled around her. "Court is adjourned," Judge Baker declared, striking the gavel one final time. The room stirred to life, people gathering papers, murmuring about the swift turnaround. Raymond patted my shoulder. "Well played, Logan. It's over." I stood briefcase in hand and headed for the door without a backward glance. But as I stepped into the hallway, Haley burst out behind me, her heels clattering unevenly on the tile. "Logan, wait, please." I paused, turning slowly. She caught up, grabbing my sleeve, her eyes red and pleading. You loved me once. How could you be so cruel? I thought we could at least part fairly. This leaves me with nothing." Her voice broke on the last word, sobs bubbling up. People in the hall glanced our way, but I kept my tone low, steady. "Cruel Haley. Cruel was signing those papers with a laugh, thinking you could walk away with the blood and sweat I poured into building everything. Cruel was plotting with Chase behind my back, enduring our marriage like a sentence. I loved you enough to protect what mattered when I saw the signs." She shook her head, tears falling freely now. "I was wrong. I see that. Please, Logan, give me something, anything. For old time's sake." I pulled my arm free, gently stepping back. "Old times. Those ended the night I heard you in the bathroom planning your escape with my money. You didn't lose because of me. You lost because of your own greed." Her face crumpled, and she sank against the wall, sliding down as sobs racked her body. I turned away, walking down the corridor, her cries fading behind me. Outside, the Atlanta sun hit my face, warm and indifferent. Haley had gambled on taking half my world, but she'd never understood I'd made sure there was nothing left for her to claim. The walls I'd built weren't just financial. They were the end of us. 3 months after the hearing, life had settled into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. Peaceful, productive, unburdened. I woke early in my Atlanta loft, the one I'd kept off the books, brewing coffee while scanning emails from Volt Cortex's latest AI security contracts. The company had exploded since the divorce dust settled. We'd landed deals with 2 Fortune 500 firms pushing our valuation past 9 figures. But the real highlight came when Forbes reached out for a profile. The headline read, "The Silent Entrepreneur, How Logan Pierce Shielded His Empire from Toxic Relationships." I agreed to the interview on one condition: no personal details about the marriage. The piece focused on asset protection strategies, quoting me anonymously on trusts and LLCs. It went viral in business circles, but I didn't chase the spotlight. Success, I'd learned, was quieter without someone trying to steal it. Haley's fall was swift and public, though I only heard fragments through mutual acquaintances. She'd sold her Buckhead condo, the one she'd bought with my credit during our happy years, to cover the $47,300 in legal fees. Chase vanished like smoke. Turns out he was a con artist with a string of ex-clients suing him for fraud. He'd skipped town, leaving her with empty promises and a police report she couldn't afford to pursue. Her social circle evaporated too. The friends who'd cheered her freedom stopped inviting her to brunches when she couldn't pick up the tab. Last I heard, she was crashing on a cousin's couch in Savannah, piecing together freelance PR gigs that barely covered rent. One evening, as I prepared for a tech conference in New York, I imagined her somewhere flipping channels in a dim room. Maybe she paused on CNN's business segment where I was speaking at the AI Summit. "I believe in love," I said into the microphone. The crowd hushed. "But I don't believe in loving someone who isn't honest enough to love you back." The camera caught my steady gaze. No bitterness, just resolve. If she saw it, I wondered if it hit her, the man she'd dismissed as boring, now commanding rooms she'd once dreamed of entering. I didn't hate her. Hate would have kept me tethered. Instead, I felt free, focusing on VoltCore's expansion, new offices in Silicon Valley, a team that respected hard work over flash. Weekends were for hiking the Georgia trails or mentoring young engineers, reminders that life thrived beyond betrayal. Victory isn't about taking from others, it's about safeguarding what you've built. Haley gambled on my fortune and lost to her own greed. As for me, I walked forward, no longer looking back. Viewers, if you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven her? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting and true-to-life stories.